Hello, and welcome to Fostering Resilience, Understanding Stress in the Mind and Body. I want you to first think about a zebra on the Serengeti, just happily grazing, munching, enjoying its lunch. And along comes a very hungry lion. Very quickly, that zebra is no longer a happily grazing zebra. It is, in fact, running for its life. It is in survival mode. It must outrun that lion. Now, if that zebra gets lucky and does either outrun the lion or the lion finds an easier prey, for whatever reason, the lion finds its way elsewhere. Pretty quickly, that zebra goes back to looking just like it did at the beginning, a happily grazing zebra on the Serengeti. You, however, are not a zebra. And if you are just minding your own business, driving down the highway, and somebody cuts you off, and they cut you off and they're gone immediately, they cut right in front of you and they're off that exit ramp, you probably don't go back to looking like the person on the left side of that screen. You probably get to your destination and will vent to anybody who will listen about that crazy driver, that big jerk on the road. What's important to understand is that while you may think of yourself as living in the modern day, your nervous system is not a modern day nervous system. In fact, we are basically hardwired the same as when we were cave people. So if you now picture yourself as a cave person, just focused here, trying to start your fire, again, minding your own business, bothering nobody, just focused on that fire. And you hear a twig snap outside your cave. What do? You probably freeze. You kind of freeze what you're doing. Your hair on your arm stands up, right? You've got threat assessment because there's only one question that needs answering in that moment. Only one. And that question is that a tiger outside my cave? Because if that is a tiger outside your cave, you are looking a lot more like that zebra on the Serengeti. You are now in fight or flight, or what we call the sympathetic nervous system. And what that nervous system is doing, it is prioritizing all of your survival strategies here. So we're going to have a much faster heart rate to get the blood to the muscles so you can run. Same with adrenaline. Those muscles need a lot of adrenaline to try to outrun that tiger. We need more air coming into the body. We need the oxygen hitting the muscles. And your vision actually will shift to be able to help you kind of strategize and take in what you need to take in. You don't need to worry about digesting your lunch. You need to worry about not being somebody else's. And so things like saliva production decrease, peristalsis, which is the rhythmic contractions of the muscles, of the organs, in your digestive system. All of that gets deprioritized. And this isn't a comprehensive list, but it is, I think, some really relevant points to thinking about what happens in your body when your body assesses that you are running for your life. Now, if that twig snaps and you freeze and you take that moment for threat assessment, but it turns out it's just your neighbor who saw you struggling to start your fire and is coming over because they have a roaring fire and they wanted to just bring you this twig here. In fact, the opposite happens. There's this not often talked about counterpart to fight or flight, and that is rest and digest, or your parasympathetic nervous system. Probably not surprisingly, it looks exactly like the opposite of that last slide. The body knows how to say, there is no tiger outside my cave. It's okay to calm down now. This is the part we don't often pay attention to or spend time really working on in our day-to-day modern, very fast-paced society. But that threat assessment, that moment where your body is trying to figure out whether it needs to activate fight or flight or activate rest and digest, in other words, deactivate fight or flight, that looks and sounds a lot different these days. Now, I want to be clear, this is not an anti-technology presentation. This is a presentation that's meant to be realistic. We are no longer running from tigers, but we're still hardwired. Our nervous system is still assessing threats that way. But in fact, the ding of a text message coming into your cell phone is processed the same way in your body, because your mind is saying, is that good news or bad news? Is that a friend or foe? What's coming at me? So every time that cell phone dings, and this is just one example of something that triggers that, trips up that part of your nervous system, right? It sets it off. And this is happening all the time to us. And we're most often not really aware that that's taking place. There's one really important distinction between us humans and the zebras in this conversation that we're having today. And that is that after a zebra survives whatever that situation was, in our example here, it was a lion, it will do one of three things. It will eat, sleep, or mate. And in doing that, it will reset its nervous system. We as humans are meant to actually hold on to that experience a little bit longer in order to learn from it. We're meant to hold on to it, learn from it, and then metabolize that stress, and then complete the stress response. I'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. And then we're meant to let go of it. Generally speaking, and I can speak for myself here, we're a little better at holding on to it. Maybe we forget to kind of let go of it, but that is meant to be part of what takes place. It's important in this conversation to distinguish between these two words here. The stressor is the thing that activates the stress. It can be internal or external. It could be that person cutting you off on the highway, or it could be checking your bank account, or it could be looking in the mirror if you have negative self-talk at what you see. That's the stressor. The stress is the neurological or physiological shift that's happening inside your body. And those are independent, because the stressor can be gone. That person cut you off on the highway and exited. They're no longer a threat to you, but the stress in your body is still there. Similarly, you could be in a situation in your life where you are managing your stress well, but the thing that's causing it, maybe that's a really challenging interpersonal relationship in your life, is still there. And that's why we always want to talk about metabolizing the stress, digesting that stress part of what we do throughout the day. And there are different ways to do that. And this is also not a comprehensive list, but this is a list based on the citations here on this slide. You can deal with the stressor and not deal with the stress. You can also manage the stress and metabolize the stress in the face of a chronic stressor. I do want to call out that prayer is very helpful for people. It's not included in this list, again, because it wasn't included in these here citations, but I always want to mention that because I think it really resonates with a lot of people, and it's not here on this slide. There are, as you saw on that last slide, a lot of different avenues to helping us de-stress. If you're a person with pets, you may really find that spending time with your pets is kind of your fastest way into rest and reset and digest and process and relax. Maybe it's a hike, maybe it's playing music or knitting. But we do know, again, thinking of ourselves as cave people, that the fastest way in to that rest and digest, to that parasympathetic nervous system, is through the body. It doesn't have to be running a marathon. It can just be anything that rhythmically kind of utilizes some of that adrenaline that's been dumped into your system, your cortisol as well, and also regulates your breathing and your heart rate. Because this is a quote from a book called Burnout. Remember, your body has no idea what filing your taxes or resolving an interpersonal conflict through rational problem solving means. It knows, though, what jumping up and down means. Speak its language, and its language is body language. Physical activity is the single most efficient strategy for completing the stress response cycle. And again, if you think of yourself as a cave person, right, if you did outrun a tiger, you'd probably go back to your village and there would be, telling the story to your community. There might even be song and dance and music and rhythm and different ways of being together and helping the body connect with the fact that you are now safe. And that's the part we need to hang on to. That's the part where we need to think, I eat food and metabolize food and then eat food again. Yet we often talk about stress as something, I'll deal with my self-care when the stress is over, rather than I'm going to find a handful of ways to insert some physical resetting of my body, of my physiological body throughout the day to metabolize this stress, to communicate to my body that I'm okay, even as the stress continues to pile on. This comes from that same book that I just mentioned a moment ago, but I think this is such a powerful point here, and an invitation, a challenge maybe to consider this other perspective on wellness. Emily and Amelia Nagoski say, to be well is not to live in a state of perpetual calm, but to move fluidly from a state of adversity back to safety and calm and out again. Stress is not bad for you. Being stuck is bad for you. Wellness happens when your body is a place of safety for you, even when your body is not necessarily in a safe place. Wellness is not a state of being, but a state of action. Wellness is not a state of being, but a state of action. Again, this idea that we are going to metabolize the stress. We're going to complete the stress response cycle. We're going to invite the body into sort of resetting, because we cannot be mentally, we cannot be emotionally in a state of wellness, in a state of balance, if we are not physiologically resetting ourselves. And so I invite you to consider this. What are ways I can help myself regain some balance, reset my heart rate, take some nice slow breaths for 30 seconds at a time, 1 minute at a time, but maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the day, we bring ourselves back into a state of balance. So we're ready, we're prepared, we can move forward with the rest of our day. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this helpful.